Hello and welcome to the B&H Virtual Event Space. Emphasis on virtual for this one, as we have director, writer, and VFX artist Jameson Brooks to talk about creating worlds and realistic lighting for XR LED stage production. Jameson, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. Um, Considering the topic, would you say we could add gaffer or lighting director to your resume?
Definitely not a gaffer. I kind of am a jack of all trades, but yeah, I DP a little bit, so I do a little bit of everything. But yeah, mostly director, DP, visual effects, and edit. So,
Gotcha.
yep.
That's a super long list. Well, I emphasize virtual. I emphasize virtual because of the XR LED stage. As a tech junkie, I love getting into my own VR headset, but the idea of getting fully immersed into a virtual environment in the real world sounds so cool. Um,
It's really cool. Yeah, I've learned to love it a lot.
Nice. But bad
Yeah,
or incorrect lighting for subjects and set pieces can destroy that immersion totally, right? Um,
absolutely. That's yeah, that's the most important thing is the lighting.
Nice. All right, all right. I digress. Before I get in the weeds and just reel off a bunch of questions that have been popping into my head since we started talking, let me take this chance to remind everyone watching live. Please, if you've got any questions, drop them into the YouTube chat and we'll address them at the end or maybe sometimes throughout. Also, thanks very much to Godox for bringing Jameson on today. With that, I'll exit the stage and here, we'll start you off with a little previewer.
I tell you the truth, before the rooster crows, you will disown me.
Not only is the set does it look cool, but it actually talks to you too. So we really are in cassette futurism.
On located.
You need the wind in your hair, though. Hold on. Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Godox production series. Today, we're filming in this amazing virtual production studio. We're going to be using a giant LED volume and going to be using Godox lights to basically create a foreground world that's going to match what's happening on the big screen behind me. So, let's do it. So we're here in Dallas, Texas. So if you're ever in the Dallas area and you're looking for an amazing virtual production studio, XR214 is a... Okay, so that's a little bit of an intro of what we are going to talk about today. So XR LED wall production. So it's this is basically like a new technology that's come out the past few years. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with it, but if you haven't seen anything of it yet, I'm going to cover a little bit of everything, like ways to get into it as far as like, entry level experimentation goes to more of a mid level to more of an advanced level. Most of the stuff I do is more probably the medium to advanced level, but we can break it down to make it as easy and intuitive as possible. So if you've seen like Mandalorian or any of the new really big fantasy shows or even sci-fi shows, a lot of them are using this technology to really enhance their scenes and the worlds that they are creating. And so that's what I wanted to talk about was how do we create these worlds and how do we apply realistic lighting to them to make it look believable and basically trick the viewer into thinking that is our scene and our reality. So this is kind of what it looks like behind the set of a XR stage. So you just saw it on that video that we just played, but this is one of the worlds that we're going to talk about. I'll dive in a little bit further as we go through this presentation, but one of the things that we covered was cassette futurism. So this was a project I shot for Godox. It was also a Yamaha commercial. So we actually had our character who was playing a video game in this really cool cassette futurism world gets sucked into the arcade game that she's playing and ends up on a Yamaha motorcycle. So it's a really cool. It was a lot of fun. This was actually one of my first goes at trying to, the XR LED wall production world. So that's why I think it's important to kind of share my experience with you, and some things that I learned, some things that I was kind of afraid of before I started, and just overall my overall experience with creating this sort of environment. So another one that we will talk about is more of a daylight kind of scenario where we do a desert dune world. And this was for a client. It was a clothing ad. And so it's a little bit more of like a branding kind of thing. And so we wanted to create this really epic looking desert world that had all these really cool little sparkles going through the atmosphere and everything. And I'll talk a little bit more about this one too as we, keep going in this presentation. But we brought in a bunch of sand. We just had a lot of fun, and we did a lot of experimenting. And I think the end result was actually pretty cool. And hopefully it looks believable on screen. So that's one of the worlds. Another world, this is one that you just saw, so I'm going to go over this a little bit more. One of these, we created a portal in one of the scenes, so I'll talk about how we created this little makeshift portal. And then another one is when our character is inside a video game riding a motorcycle. And so how we kind of went about that. So if you see some of the images on the lower part of the screen down there, it's basically just a stationary bike, and we're able to kind of cheat the camera angles to make it work for what it is that we're doing. So another really cool thing that we're going to go through and talk about more is more of the lighting control, and that's with the new Godox KnowLED app. And so this is a really cool iPad-based application that will basically is a diagram that you can control all of your lights seamlessly in one location on an iPad throughout your entire set, which is really, really cool. And I'll talk more about that too as we keep going. But this is another world that we created. This was more of like a Halloween kind of based project. So I shot this a couple of months ago. And this was a mad scientist world. That was really a lot of fun to do. We had a really good set deck. So he was amazing. His name's Wally. And he is incredible. And you'll see some more of his work as we keep going here. And I'll talk more about the importance of set dressing and your production design, not just on your LED wall, but on the foreground environment in front of the screen. So that's a really important element. This is a little bit more about the lighting control. So I'm going to go further into creating these worlds with the KnowLED app. And so this is basically just your one-stop shop of organizing all of these lights that we have on set, because there are a lot of lights. And disclaimer, there's probably a ton of lights that I'm going to reference throughout this. We are going to be posting links in the chat that if I'm referencing a certain light here and there, maybe you can check it out on B&H's website and know a little bit more about that light, because there are a million features for each light, and I don't know all of them. And so if you go to the B&H website, you're able to see every feature and see the price and kind of know what works for you and how you can apply it to whatever it is you're filming. But this is our gaffer. This is Eric Niedebitz. He is on the iPad on the KnowLED app, and he's basically controlling what we have in a bunch of our environments here. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the KnowLED app really is the perfect tool for working on an LED volume. And so just a little bit about myself. So I primarily work as a director, a DP, an editor, and a writer. Kind of a jack of all trades. There are a lot of titles, but I love filmmaking. So I've just kind of immersed myself into try to learn as many different, applications as possible, and just try to make myself as well-rounded as possible. So then that way I can basically be able to manage a set and kind of control more things about it without needing, a humongous crew or a humongous budget. So, and that's really the main thing that I really want to go into is making the XR LED volume work for anyone on any kind of budget. So you don't need a massive budget to do this kind of technology, which is really, really cool. And so this is a film that I directed and co-wrote, and I also edited. It's called Bomb City. It's a true crime story. If you are up for it, you feel like checking it out, I really would appreciate it. This was more of a passion project that came out several years ago, and we had Marilyn Manson got behind it, Richard Linklater, CJ Ramon of the Ramones hosted events for us about it. It was just a really cool punk rock story, true crime story, and it's on Peacock Prime, Apple TV, and Roku channel. I think it's on a bunch of other stuff right now. I'm not sure, but If you wanted to and you had the time, I really would appreciate you checking it out. And then I can, if you ever want to hit me up and ask any questions about the movie, feel free to hit me up on social or shoot me an email. So here's what we're going to talk about today. So XR LED wall production. So, like I said before, we're creating worlds with realistic lighting. And so these are just a couple of screenshots from some recent projects that I've done. One is the cassette futurism world. So, more of a sci-fi kind of style thing. Another one is a witch's lair. So we went really dark and moonlight and very, candlelit moody for that one. All of this is shot on the XR LED wall, which is really cool. Another one, we actually use the LED wall as more of a practical source where a character was interacting with it. And that's that surveillance looking studio down at the very bottom. It's more silhouetted. And so that's what's cool about the LED wall is you can actually use it as a practical tool where your actor actually can use it within the environment, which is awesome. You can't really, I mean, you could do it with a green screen, but not to that effect and not to get as realistic of an approach as you would if you had an actual, tangible LED wall that's like right there in front of you. So another one world that we created was a sci-fi laboratory. It's more of a futuristic laboratory where they were developing crystals and diamonds. So we got to play with a lot of fun purples and blues and pinks and just a lot of really fun RGB colors. And then the other one is more of that daylight desert dune look that we created with the XR stage. So I'll talk about these a little bit later in this presentation. So a little bit more about me behind the set. So I don't just do XR LED volumes. I do work in all kinds of scenarios. So I do everything from documentaries to music videos. I really got started doing music videos early in my career. That's where I learned visual effects because a lot of music videos will allow you to just go crazy and really build your reel. And that's kind of where I really started with the visual effects world. Like if I wanted to do a gunfight or I wanted to do, anything like maybe laser beams or whatever it is, a sky replacement, just anything narrative wise for a music video, it really, the possibilities are endless. And a lot of times you don't have the largest budgets whenever you're starting out doing music videos. And so that's really where I got, that's where my roots are. And so that evolved into more of the documentary world and then into the feature film world. And then now I'm able to apply the XR LED volume into the feature film and the television world. And so that's basically where we're at now. So these are just some of the clients that I've worked with over the years. I've done commercial projects for Amazon, AT&T, Mercedes-Benz, had work featured on Netflix and Walmart commercials, pretty much you name it. Have done all kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, just a little bit more about me. I also do some graphic design work as well. So I do a little bit of everything, but I just really enjoy, the artistic aspect of, filmmaking and like really what it allows, what doors it opens up, for all of us as just being a filmmaker. So another thing that I do is I host the Godox production series. So this is an educational series that we have a team of collaborators. We all get together and we basically test out the latest Godox lights and we apply those to a scene that we created, or we'll create a short film, we'll create something for it, and then we'll basically take you along for the whole process and show you what lights we used, how we did it, and just kind of just show you just an overview of all of it. We have a lot of fun. It's on the Godox Global YouTube. And so there are all kinds of episodes on there. We do have an XR LED wall. That's what you watched earlier on for the intro. It was just a really brief segment, but if you want to watch that full video of the XR LED wall, I'll be talking about it too, but it's called Cyber Cycle. And it's on the Godox YouTube right now. So that's one of the episodes we have. We also have ones that are just basically more geared toward like boxing or more towards fashion or just a little bit of everything. But check out the Godox production series on the Godox Global YouTube. I would really appreciate it and can't wait for the next episode. So let's talk more about why we're here today. So why we're here today is we want to learn more about the XR LED volume. And I think this is a very important question. I just wanted to answer and be as like honest and straightforward with my application and my experience as possible. So why do I prefer XR LED volume over a green screen? Well, coming from a visual effects background and, shooting tons of projects on green screen, and then crossing over into this new, XR LED volume world. It's totally different as far as like your amount of production where it goes. So uh, the good thing about the XR LED volume is that there's less post production work. There's no chroma keying or rotoscoping or tracking nightmare. So if you've ever used or shot on a green screen, a lot of times you can't get that perfect chroma key. Like there's still that little artifacting happening, around your subject. You're having a rotoscope, you're having to like track cameras. It can just be a nightmare, a very time consuming nightmare. And a lot of times clients or it just depends what you're doing, but like they don't understand how complex it can be. That they're just like, oh, we'll film it in front of a green screen and you can play with it from there. But it's not that easy. It rarely is that easy. So what I like about the XR LED volume is that it's basically what you see is what you get. So referring to what you're actually seeing in your camera and your monitor is like literally the world that you are getting. That's your result, which is awesome. It's going to save so much time in post production when it comes to editing. That's one of the things that I really, really love about it. So, what you see is what you get. It's easier to match the world for all the departments as well. So, your camera department, your lighting, your set deck, even your hair and makeup. I mean, you're seeing it for all that's there. So, as opposed to a green screen, when sometimes you film something with a green screen, you have your one lighting and you're kind of stuck with that. And you're stuck with that same looking just light and the way that it cascades and everything. And it doesn't always match every world that you're wanting to put, in place of the green screen. So that's one advantage that the XR LED volume, that's a big advantage that it has over to shooting on a green screen. So it's also better for your talent. So like your actors can be immersed in a world as opposed to trying to pretend what is on the other side of that green screen. What am I seeing? Am I seeing, a castle behind me? Am I seeing dragons? Am I seeing another planet? Am I in space? Am I in a spaceship? You know, they know exactly where they are and how they need to act, and they have better reference of their space and the way to utilize that space. So I think as far as blocking goes as well, it's very helpful because you can coordinate your shots, you can coordinate with your talent. It's just so much more efficient on set. It's also better for your crew. So crew can see it. They can look at the monitors. You know exactly what lights need to go where. Your set decorations, your like I said, your hair and makeup. A lot of it corresponds with that world and seeing if it works or not, like what's happening on that background. So it's a better immersive experience for everybody on set. Plus way faster setup. So you're doing multiple sets in a single day. So like technically you could do this with a green screen, but like I said before, you can't really match. You're not really knowing exactly what it is you are matching with your world and where the lights need to go. And maybe that needs to be a little bit brighter. Maybe that light needs to be a little more orange or pink or whatever it is. This is just a way faster way of saying, okay, we're in a desert dune world. Okay, now we're going to switch over to a cassette futurism world. Now we're going to go back over to a surveillance world. You never know, but you can just change it on the fly. And it takes a matter of minutes usually, especially if you're utilizing the KnowLED app and you're setting programmed settings for all of your lighting. It's a really easy way. And I'll kind of show you a special trick that we've kind of learned over our experience doing this for several different shoots now. The way that we kind of have our lighting set up, it kind of remains the same for most of it. We just move a few things around, but you're lighting for a space mostly, as opposed to the lighting for, just a face or, vice versa. But mainly you're just lighting the space and then you're fine tuning the light that's actually falling onto your subjects, depending on your frame that you're shooting with your camera. So we'll get into more of that here in just a little bit. But, and like I just said, easier pre-light setup. So like if you program your lights with the KnowLED app, you're able to switch over your lighting to make it match literally what's happening on the screen behind you. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But pre-production is the key to success. So unlike green screen, green screen is all about post-production. So obviously there's a little bit of pre-production involved, especially if you're going to key out and reference what it is you're filming while you're filming it. But with the XR LED volume, pre-pro is all the work. It's about 75% of the work. So I'll go into that more about it, but let's go ahead and talk about my approach with using the LED wall. So I'm just going to talk of a little bit more straightforward process here to where I think the majority of people can relate, and it's the easiest way to just put something on the screen and go. There's so many technical terms. This can get really, really out of hand really, really fast when you're working with the LED, volume. There's software like the Unreal Engine. There's like camera tracking. There's all kinds of stuff. But what I'm going to do is show you projects that I haven't had any, like no Unreal Engine and no camera tracking software. So it's literally, I'm just using my camera, a dolly, and some practical elements in front of the screen. And that's how we're pulling this off. So it's what I call the 2D approach. And I think it's probably the majority of people that are experimenting with the XR LED wall for the first time are using this technique. And I was honestly, at first, I was really worried about using it because I was like, there's no way it's going to look believable, or, I need the tracker, I need parallax, I need, the camera to move and everything, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing, but it's also a lot more complex whenever you add that. So you're going to need, more technicians. You're going to need a larger crew. You're going to need more budget. There's a lot of factors that go into doing it that way, which is incredible. But for, speaking from my personal experience and what I'm able to do with, the budgets that I'm working on, for the most part, I'm using a 2D approach, and I'll go a little bit more into that. So 75% of my time is spent creating worlds for the LED wall. So for this, I use software like After Effects, Premiere, Photoshop. These are just some images of, fine tuning the actual screen itself while we're on set. The screen that I'm using, that I'm showing in this presentation, it was about probably 50 feet wide. It's slightly curved, but it's 50 feet wide and it's about 13 feet tall. So it's pretty big screen. I mean, now they have studios where you have screens on top, you have screens on the sides, you have screens below, everywhere. And so that's where it gets a lot more complex. But, based on the amount of time that we have, I didn't want to talk about shooting on one of those massive, massive stages. I wanted to simplify this, strategy as much as possible and see how we can find a way to make it work for the majority of worlds, and see how fast we can get to what you see is what you get, and have something really cool for way less of a budget. So, background options are the key to success. So some backgrounds don't look right until it's on the LED wall. So a lot of times, I'll create a world, and I'll go a little bit more on how I create the worlds and everything. By world, I mean what's on the screen. So like, so there's that lower picture down there with the motorcycle, and there's like some crazy skull. It's the skull's basically laughing, and it's like this like moving, like the talents riding that motorcycle through some crazy like make believe fantasy world. But at first glance, whenever I looked at that world, I was like, there's no way this is going to work, because it's just like, you see it in real life and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that. But what the camera sees is a totally different story. And so what the camera saw was actually something really, really cool, and that looked kind of out of this world. And so ended up being something that we really, really liked, and we ended up using. But I like to have multiple options on whatever world it is. I mean, the other great thing about the XR stage is that you are able to move your world around. Like if you want it to be a little bit, zoomed in or punched out, or to the left a little bit or to the right, you can actually manually move what is on that screen to fit your scene, which is really, really cool. Especially for your compositions, like if you're doing a close-up or you're doing a wide shot, or there's just way more flexibility with it. And that's what I think is really, really cool about the XR stage. So this is just basically showing kind of like the foundation of where we start with these XR LED worlds. So this is basically one of the techniques that I use to build out a world. So I don't have this image down here animated, but what I usually do is I'll take an actual image, or I'll composite an image together. So you could even use like AI. AI is so advanced now, you could actually generate a photo in Photoshop, and then basically take it into After Effects and animate it. Just depending on what the world is. Like if you have a sky and you need to animate clouds, or if you have like this world that we're looking at right here, well, it looks like we're like inside a spaceship or some futuristic looking room. And so what I would do is I am able to animate a lot of these HUDs, is what they're called, little sci-fi. If you see sci-fi movies, they're little blinking, flashing, computer images. And so basically what those are doing, you just load them up on the screen. You just put them everywhere. You composite them into this picture. And as that happens, what the camera sees is that there's actually just subtle motion everywhere around your world, and that's what's making it look more believable and like it's an actual real world. And so, yeah, like I said, I'll composite video elements and animations to bring a picture to life. So you can literally take any kind of picture and just animate it on top of it. So what I usually do is I'll create it from scratch. So if I have an image myself, if I want to create a 3D world, if I want to go, say I want to go to a city and I want, okay, this street corner, I'll do a 360-degree panoramic, basically photo for what, every angle that I can stitch together. And then from there, I can actually add whatever it is I need to. I have room to slide the image like left or to the right, whatever it is to fit my actual LED screen. So that's just one reference. So if you want to actually take a real world scenario that you've taken a photo from, you can do it that way. Or you could just actually film a clean plate with, video itself, which is the easiest approach possible. I know that a lot of times, if you're driving and you have a car that's in an LED volume, that's a really popular way that people are using this technology, is that they have plates that they filmed of, a moving car. And so you're basically projecting that, moving, background onto the screen. And so whether it's the profile of the car or behind the car, in front of the car, you basically give yourself the options and the plates to make that happen. And the higher resolution that you shoot in, the better, because these screens need a lot of sharpness to really, really make it look like real life. Because if you think about real life, obviously depending on how good your eyesight is, but real life is very, very sharp. I mean, it's very clean. It's like an F20, basically. Like it's like stopped all the way down for the most part. You're never really that shallow depth of field. So one thing that I was wondering about was, well, if I'm shooting on an LED screen and I want the background to be blurry, do I need to actually physically blur my background plate on the actual screen itself? And the answer is no, you don't. Sometimes you might, just depends what you're going for. But all of the worlds that I create are as sharp as can be, because that's how reality is. You let the lens that you're using and your camera you're using do all the heavy lifting on that end. And so you can pull your subject back from the screen, you can move it closer to the screen, it doesn't really matter. But make sure to keep the backgrounds as sharp as possible. And that has really helped me, along with making this look as believable as possible. So okay, another way that you can create an image is generate from AI. So Photoshop, there's all kinds of AI. I'm still a newbie when it comes to AI. I don't really use it as much as I should. I'm more old school about my approach, but you can generate some really nice images. Just make sure that they're really, really high resolution. You could use stock footage. So a lot of times I'll stitch together even stock footage and make that work. So maybe you just need certain elements of things, with stock footage. Like if you want to create some of these HUDs for a sci-fi environment, you could literally grab stock footage, clips of HUD systems and put them into your world and make that work. Just whatever's going to be like more of a minimal way of tricking that camera into thinking like this is an actual live world that's moving. So a lot of times if you're just using a stationary picture, it tends to look really flat and look really not believable, from my experience. So that's why I think it's really, really key to animate whatever it is the background's doing, just because the camera is, you're able to cheat that to your audience, where they believe that, oh, if there's a candle in the background, that candle's flickering, it's not just stationary. And so that's a really, really big deal. And once again, resolution matters. So like I believe the screen that we were shooting on, it needed to be 5K as far as resolution goes, and it needed to be 2K tall. So I mean, it's not crazy, high resolution, based on there's like 12K cameras now and everything. But for the most part, it just you don't want to blow up a 720p image or a 1080p image even. You could probably make 1080 work, but you definitely want 4K and above if you're going to be projecting onto a big, big screen. So let's go ahead and show. So here's more of the results of what you get. So this is what I mean about looking at the screen and then seeing, it's sharp on the screen. So if you look at the behind the scenes photo, I'm there. I have a dolly in the camera, and I'm basically just pushing forward with the camera into the subject. And so she's playing the video game, but if you look at what the lens is doing, what the lens sees down there at the final result is it sees soft bokeh everywhere. And so you're able to get that fall off, and it's way more believable because that's how it would look in real life. So it's a matter of creating the right kind of depth and making sure that your character's the right distance from the screen. And I think one uh, way that it really helps with this certain scenario and environment that we're in is the screen was curved, so it gave us a little bit of just a more natural, less flat looking world. So this that little bit of bend in the wall really helps with the final result. So that's kind of what it looks like. I'll go more into what we do in that foreground and what makes things look more believable. Another thing that is very crucial with filming on an XR stage is that whatever your subjects are in the foreground, so like in front of the screen, that they're always going to appear a lot more darker. They're going to have way more contrast. So their black levels are going to be basically a little more darker, a lot more crisp. So you need to make sure that whatever the screen is projecting is as dark and contrasty as possible. That's at least in the dark environments. And that's what I found to be the most believable. So if you look even like in that reference photo, there's the camera. And then in the background, there's a lot of like black levels in between. So there's a lot of space between, the color pops of everything. And so that's going to help basically shape the lighting as well. But it's also that levels of contrast kind of help tie the background world to the foreground world a lot better. And so here's another example. So we created a cave environment. And so wanted the cave to be a little bit colder feeling as opposed to warm. We shot it more of a warm tone, but really it's cool as far as, color grading and stuff goes. But one thing that I did with the cave is I composited an image with kind of like these dust particles in the background just to animate a little bit of just movement that was happening behind our subject here. It's hard to tell with just images, but like if you were to see the video, you'd kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But just to talk more about the contrast levels, the screen itself. So we have some rock formations that are in the foreground. These are just like rocks that we either created or we ended up renting, just big boulders, just the something that would give us some layered depth within our scene. And so that's basically what we're doing here. And the screen, I remember on this one, I had to basically just S curve it, but I had to keep the when you S curve, if you're familiar with color grading at all, you have to bring down your contrast levels, your black all the way down, so that you're almost losing detail in a way in the screen. But the end result is it actually looks more believable within your world because your subject is going to appear a lot darker than what's happening on your screen. So a lot of times you will lose some detail of what's happening on the screen, but at the cost of making the overall image look more believable, it's totally worth it. So once again, that's what's nice about having the XR stage is like I'm able to take that cave world that's behind the subject and I can move it and slide it to make it work. Like if I wanted the opening to be behind her, or if I just wanted there to be just a cave wall behind her, I could do that. And we have our key light direction and we just went from there. But that's just one way that we do that. But yeah, just always remember that the contrast levels are going to be darker on your subject in front of the screen. And so what you're doing is trying to match that contrast level, the shadows, just the overall darkness of that. That's what you're basically trying to replicate to make it look as believable as possible. So here's another reference of just some worlds that like I've created and the ways that I will modify them before I put them on the screen. So if you look at that desert world, so that's where I started. So this was an image, it's just a panoramic photo of a desert world. And so what I did is I took it into After Effects. I added a sky replacement. I added some dust, clouds in the foreground, just throughout the dunes. I've been also added, because this was more of like a fantasy type spot, like a fantasy world, like another planet. I added in this little like particles that kind of shimmered, in the air. And so when the camera sees that, it just helps kind of blend things together and make it seem a little bit more lively than if it were just a flat image. So if you see it in the middle, you can see that our talent is walking through some sand. That's sand that we brought in. And we just had a little bit of narrow walkway that we were able to put sand on because we didn't have, the big stage to put everything on. But we just made it work for what we had. And so if you look at the behind the scenes photo to the far right, we're using the blues and the warm tones from the lighting and the sand dunes from there. And then, yeah, the screen is basically animated. And then, so if we go down to the trendy laboratory down at the bottom, that's the world that I put up on the screen. So whenever you see the actual finished result there in the middle, and then you see the behind the scenes to the lower right side, that's all that's kind of happening, in the foreground and what it looks like whenever it's projected onto the screen in the background. So, um, yeah, that's just something to consider, with the way that you can transform a scene using either a daylight or an RGB. What's cool about this XR stage is you can literally match the lighting so much more efficiently. And so I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But the camera setup. So this is, I think, one thing that's really important to me. I have tried to film on XR stages. Some people are really good at it. They can use spherical lenses, and I bet it's a piece of cake to do it if you know what you're doing. But for me, I've had the best results using any kind of anamorphic glass. So, some of the shots or some of the projects that I've done, one of them was I actually shot it vertical anamorphic. So I basically took the camera, I turned it on its side and used the anamorphic aspect ratio, which basically squeezed it into like a 1:1 aspect ratio. So it's not exactly 1:1, but it's more of a square, just to kind of get the idea. If you look at that shot on the left side, you actually see it on my monitor there. It's actually more of a square, but the reason we did that is because they wanted the end commercial to be mostly on social. So it was for Instagrams, for Facebook, it was for TikTok, whatever. And so, when you shoot anamorphic, if you've ever shot anamorphic, it stretches that screen. Like it is super, super widescreen, which isn't always the best result for anything social. So like a lot of times, we unfortunately we shoot something in like 8K, 12K, 6K, whatever it is, and it goes on a tiny phone and people watch it. And for whatever reason, 12K doesn't always translate to the little 1080p that's on your phone in a widescreen format. So a lot of times you have to make do with what works for the project. So this one, we rolled the dice and we shot it vertical anamorphic, which actually turned out really cool and actually really liked the result on the XR stage production. So I'll show you some more stills as we keep going. But the other thing that I shoot anamorphic 16:9. So like that's your common anamorphic. It's a 2:1 aspect ratio if you're familiar with aspect ratios. But this is basically, I just love using the anamorphic because it has this vintage character to it that will allow the bokeh and the backgrounds to kind of blend a little bit more seamlessly. It kind of distorts everything, like even your foreground world. And because of that extra distortion, I found it helps like make the world seem more believable. So like if you're shooting on a spherical lens, that's very clinical and very sharp, a lot of times it almost gives away too much of your environment. It gives away your technique in that you're shooting in front of a screen. So I generally try to dirty up the lens as much as possible. So whether that's putting stuff in front of the lens or if you want to stack some filters on there, it's a big no-no as far as like what you would do in reality. But I feel like I personally felt like my results have been better the more that I can add distortion to what it is I'm shooting, to the lenses or to what it is I'm pulling off. But what we're doing here is I'm shooting on a red Komodo. So what I like about the red Komodo is that it has a global shutter, which is really, really nice for the XR LED volume because for whatever reason, I feel like it translates so much better than a rolling shutter sensor does on, uh, a regular camera. You can use cinema cameras and everything. It really doesn't matter, but I just felt like for my personal experience, for any kind of movement, just to make it seem a lot more believable, that global shutter has really been like, at least something that I've had really good results on. And the lens I'm using is a Lomo round front 50mm 2.4 vintage lens. So that's a mouthful, but it is just a tried and true. It's just an old lens. I know I've been really curious about trying Atlas or some DZO anamorphic lenses. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So in front of the screen, I have tried other anamorphic lenses, and one thing that you have to be wary of if you're using anamorphic are the ones that have a little bit of haze on the front of it. So some are very sensitive to light. So a lot of the more budget friendly anamorphics aren't going to be as forgiving as, a vintage older lens that doesn't flare quite as much or significantly. But if you're in a darker environment, you should be fine. But I've just had really good results with using a vintage anamorphic lens. And a lot of times I'll just have an old school magnifying glass that I'll just put right in front of the lens. And for whatever reason, for close-ups, it just looks awesome. It just distorts the world, and I end up having a good result. So another really, really key thing is your camera needs to match the frame rate of the video that you're projecting onto your LED world. So keep in mind, if you're shooting something, and your world is at 2398, so basically 24 frames per second, and that's what your LED wall is, you can't really shoot over crank like 60 frames per second or anything on your camera without it doing something weird. Like it'll add frames to it. Like it just won't look as believable. Sometimes it flickers. You just see what the screen is doing, and it doesn't always work out. So that's one. I haven't personally been able to figure that out as much as I would like to, but that's just one thing that I've noticed that I've had issues with is trying to film slow motion on the XR LED stage. So it is possible. I don't know frequency specs and all that. And usually I'm having to serve as my own technician for the most part on running the LED wall itself, along with the production, the camera and everything. So just keep in mind if you're planning to shoot slow motion, just really look into what it is you're trying to do before you show up and have to scrap, the way that you're going to shoot because you weren't prepared for the glitchiness of slow motion playback with your camera. So 2398, that's the safety. Just stick with it. If that's what your background world is, that's what I found out to be perfect. So yeah, hopefully that helps. There's a little bit more about the camera setup, and it shows more of me in action with the dolly there, and then with a few other behind the scenes shots here. So let's talk more about the environment. So this is really, really important with XR filming. It's because the set dressing is literally the most important element other than the lighting, because it's going to bring all your foreground, all your believability stuff that's like actual practical elements that your talent can interact with are like crucial. Because I mean, if the world looks really fake behind them, but they're interacting with the real world, it's actually kind of hard to differentiate what is actually happening with the camera. So it's just creating extra layers of parallax for the camera. And just what we like to do is stagger the layers of, props and set decoration. And this is Brian Whalier, and we call him Wally, an amazing, amazing set deck. He's worked on huge movies and TV shows and everything, but he's just like a master at like creating these foreground worlds and giving it as much detail and complexity to match what's happening on the LED environment behind. So it's basically what we're trying to do is create an immersive environment throughout the entire set, and then just throwing the camera in there and letting the camera just be another point of view. And so this is like another, example. So like this right here on the left side is the top left over there is our mad scientist world. And so this is kind of the result of the top images of the mad scientist world, of having the foreground images, the foreground elements in front of it, and using the LED wall as a background. And so the little bit lower one is our surveillance scene, and that's basically a big surveillance wall. We're doing it, and the talent is able to interact with computers and setups in front of the screen, but also engage with the screen itself. So it's kind of creating these multiple layers of a world to really just make it seem as believable as possible for the camera. It gives us more coverage options with our camera. It just helps the overall aesthetic of the image you're trying to create. And so yeah, here's a little bit more. So this was actually Wally's idea, was shooting. We wanted the perspective of, looking into an arcade game and playing an arcade game, but being inside the arcade game and getting that point of view as the character looks in. So we just created, we put up plexiglass and took a projector and projected the game itself onto the screen of the plexiglass. And the end result was actually really cool. The character was able to interact with the screen itself, and we were able to dolly forward with the camera and have this awesome XR stage behind. And it just created all these different layers of parallax. And so you're going to hear me say parallax a lot, just because that is really the key element besides the lighting into making your camera moves look a lot more believable, especially using 2D worlds. So I'm not camera tracking anything in any of these. So um, that's the important part is having a if it's different if you were to just have a talent and a screen and that was it, no foreground world, no props, none of that. You really will need to be a lot more subtle on your camera moves because if you're trying to move all over the place, it's going to give away the illusion of what you're trying to create with the fake LED screen world. So that's why it's really important to have these foreground elements and some props just to keep that in mind if you're looking at doing this LED wall production, just because it's going to add that extra layer of believability. So let's go and talk about some of the lighting. So like I said before, the lighting really is the most important part into immersing your world and making it seem as believable as possible because essentially you're trying to match what's happening in the foreground with what's happening in the background. So these are just a couple of the lights that I'll be going through. These are all Godox KnowLED lights. So KnowLED is Godox's professional line. So these are the lights that are going to be a lot more rugged, have a ton more features. A lot of these have built-in CRMX, so you're able to basically wirelessly connect it through the KnowLED app. So I'll go over a little bit of that as well. They just have a ton of features. Some of these lights have pixel mapping, which is really, really crucial with tying it together with what's happening on the actual screen itself. So let me keep going here. One light is P300R. You got your P600R, your TP4R, your C7R, which are the little RGB bulbs, F800R, which is amazing. I'll talk about that here in a second, and the KnowLED app. So here's a little bit more about the P300R and the P600R. So they are literally catered to virtual production because these lights are the pixel mapping, just having it the capability to match basically any color on any screen. So like they're smooth with virtual production systems. The pixel mapping is amazing. They'll just blend the actors with the environment so much better. They have Ethernet control. They have CRMX. They have so many options with playing with layered lighting or just different vibrant colors as a tons of effects. They're really, really cool tools to use. And so a lot of times we're using softboxes with grids an LED environment, and it's really important to use a grid because you don't want extra light spill throughout your environment when using an LED wall, because what will happen is if you face a light toward the screen, it's going to wash out the screen, and that gives away, you trying to create this immersive world because it's just going to wash out the screen. If the screen looks washed out, it's going to look like a screen. So that's why it's really important to control the light spill as much as possible. So that way you don't have to worry about it washing onto your screen. So Godox does have a lot of accessories for these particular lights. So there's a lot of options there. You can check them out on B&H. And then this is another really cool light that we like to use. It's pretty much a take it anywhere. I know a lot of photographers love these lights too, because you can take it, you can Hollywood the light, which is basically just holding it up, getting your shot or whatever it is. But we used these in a lot of different scenarios where we just laid them on the ground or draped them overhead, stuff like that. So they work out pretty good. They have a ton of effects. They also have pixel mapping. So you're able to use a lot of really cool stuff. They also have CRMX built in, so they can directly communicate with the KnowLED app to control and sync with the app. So you can basically remote control anything on your set to match what is happening on your screen. These are brand new. These just came out. So these are RGB flex mats. And like I have been a big advocate for flex mats for a while now, just because I feel like they're one of the most versatile lights you can have, not just in the XR film world, but in the practical world. Just having them for interview setups, or if you just have a talking head or you're trying to light a space, whatever it is, these lights, they're super lightweight. You can set them up anywhere. You can zip tie them, duct tape them, whatever. You don't even need to stand a lot of times. And they're crazy bright, and it basically allows you to have this really nice soft lighting with these diffusers where you don't have to bring in a lot of extra grip gear. So you don't have to have like extra diffusion panels and extra soft boxes or anything like that. It's all basically all in one with your actual fixture itself, which saves a lot of space and a lot of time and a lot of equipment whenever you're having to set some stuff up. So especially if you're working in a smaller crew, then if you're in a large crew, you're good. You have all the grip stuff. But if you're working with just a smaller team or even by yourself, these are really really nice to have. The capabilities. They have these little grommets that you can literally mount them to anything, which are cool. I've wrapped these lights around pillars. I put them into corners. I've literally just velcroed them to ceilings. Like, you can find all kinds of different ways to use these particular lights, and they're also IP rated, so they can get wet. I've done rain shoots where we just poured rain onto all of our lights on set. These were some of the lights that got hit with the rain, and they performed flawlessly. They were amazing. I know if you've seen the new Batman, the Robert Pattinson one, that was a lot of that was shot on a virtual production stage, and they actually, I mean, it poured rain. If you're familiar with that movie, they poured rain the entire time. So they're on an actual 360-degree LED volume with pouring rain. So I don't know exactly what lights they used in particular. I'm not saying they use these lights, but I'm just saying these lights themselves could hold up to what was happening on that set with all the pouring rain on an LED volume. These would be pretty cool to use. Plus, these ones have built-in effects and just a lot of features, and really, I mean, they're crazy bright too. So love those lights. Here's a bunch of different sizes that they come in. So you have F800R, which is the largest panel light, but you can, if you really wanted like a big wall of light, you could tether all of these together. So like if you wanted these 4x4 panels, you could tether, I don't know, 20 of them together if you just wanted this massive, massive wall of light. If your production called for it, then you got it. So you can go as big or as small. There's pretty much a size and a variation for whatever it is you need. So these lights are just so versatile. You can take them anywhere. They're just a perfect tool for really any kind of filmmaking. And then the C7R bulbs. So these are cool. They're C7R and C10R. So C7R are going to be a little less powerful. C10R are going to be more powerful. And so that's the difference there. But you are able to kind of take these kind of lights and like pepper them within the scene. So like a lot of times if there's something like in this particular scene, there's a supernatural witches layer. So to make it supernatural, we wanted to add some neon lighting throughout this like moon candle lit kind of world that's like set in the 1600s 1700s, but just to kind of give it a little more magic. And so that's why these C7Rs are really cool, because you can place them anywhere. You can hide them within your environment. You can still have the screen behind it, and it works. So they're just a really cool tool, and they have an internal battery, the C7Rs. So you can dial them in really, really fast. You can place them somewhere. You can hide them. You can use them as a practical source in your shot. There's just so many options with using those particular lights. So another fixture that we end up using a lot is kind of a Leica spotlight attachment. These are the VSA spotlight attachments. These are Bowman's mount. Godox has several options of lights that you can use, but spotlights are your friend in XR stage lighting, just because they're not going to spill everywhere, and you can fine tune and control and shape the light with these better than you can any other kind of light. So if you need a harder, light going somewhere, like for instance, with this one, we were in a magical cave. So what we're doing is we're hitting these spotlights onto little chandelier crystals, and it's refracting all these cool little, rainbow patterns all over our environment. And it was just a cool way to use a spotlight. And so that's just one instance. The fact that like these Leicos too have the built-in flags, you can control the light spill, and you don't have to worry about it spilling onto your screen itself. So just a lot of precise ways you can use that light. So it's a little bit more about the VSA spotlight attachment as well. These are just some of the angle options. The angle will, define how, sharp your beam is or how wide it is, what the spill is of it. Usually I tend to stay in the 26-degree realm, just right in the middle. It's usually the sweet spot, but really any of these will work really, really nice. And this is a light that just came out. I haven't been able to personally try this yet, but I did see this light just get announced, and I'm really excited to try it because I feel like it's perfect for not only virtual production, but for basically any applications as well. These are RGB or bicolored, smaller little, put them in your backpack type light, but they're They have all kinds of modifiers on them. They're really cool. Yeah, all kinds of different power options. These are just really, really cool. So, um, anyway, that's a little bit more about that. Like I said, I haven't been able to get my hands on them quite yet, but hopefully I will in the future and can talk more about them on the production series for a future episode. So here's a couple more images of just behind the scenes with the lighting. So that's really what we're going to talk about now is lighting for the XR stage world. So um, here's motivated lighting idea right here. So basically what you're trying to do is motivate the light to match the world as best as possible. So these are just some examples. That's kind of what the world would look like. So we have our P600Rs up top. We got P300Rs to the side. And so that's basically what that kind of looks like. And the KnowLED app is what we're using to control all of the lights. Here's what the KnowLED app looks like in action. And so what is nice about this is you're actually able to lay out exactly the lights that you're using on set for the gaffer to see and to basically replicate what is happening on your set practically. So we kind of keep this formula throughout all of our productions just because you're able to just modify different, features of a certain light. And it's pretty much that easy. You modify it, you bring in certain lights for close-ups and whatnot. But other than that, your lighting is pretty much consistent throughout whatever the world is that you're trying to create. There's also these other really cool menu modes. This is just showing the light control menu of the KnowLED app. And it's also nice because the KnowLED app has universal compatibility that works with any lighting brand. So any other manufacturer, you can use it using your CRMX signal. And that's the TMO-Link TRX is the Godox TMO-Link. You plug it into the DMX port of the light itself, and it allows you to turn a non-CRMX light into a CRMX light that can communicate with the iPad and the KnowLED app. And so once again, just another diagram of the KnowLED app in action of all of the lights that are on the set itself. And if anybody wants to see this particular episode I'm talking about, it is on the Godox Global YouTube. I believe we have a link to it. It's called Cyber Cycle. And so that will kind of go more in depth on, seeing everything happen in live action if you wanted to see the final result with that one. Here's more of a mad scientist world. I talked about it a little bit earlier. Here's kind of more of the world, and we're keeping the same lighting setup for the most part as far as like our lighting diagram goes. The only thing is we just added a 12 by diffusion at the very top as our fill light over the top of everything. And then with the KnowLED app, we're able to modify our lighting, our tones to basically interact with what's happening on the screen. So we have your greens, we have our blues, all that kind of stuff to make it seem a lot more realistic in our camera world. So yeah, once again, kind of the same foundation as far as our diagram goes. We just added a few other tube lights in there. And then here's, more behind the scenes of creating a daylight scene. And so here's just some images here of, the ways that we utilize that. We used a really cold blue tone. That's what's good about the RGB lights. And then we blended that with some bicolor lights on the other side. So her key light was more of a sunlit, sunny, warm kind of tone. So we're using a lot of color contrast here. And a lot of diffusion just to create that soft lighting that falls off across her face there. And then you'll probably wonder what is happening with the light beam. That's actually a flashlight that's hitting the lens and creating lens flares with what's happening with the lens. So here's another shot of how we got that image right there. We're using like a fan, just a little portable fan, and some little atmosphere haze just to add, some dust into the atmosphere for that particular shot. And then here is a motivated lighting, look at the futuristic lab. So we kind of saw a little bit of this, but yeah, it's just using foreground elements, using those practical elements, and using the lights to mimic what is happening on, our world as it falls in front of the camera. So let me go ahead and talk more about, since we're running short on time here. I want to talk a little bit about this scene right here. So what we're using here to create this shot, this is a portal. And so our character is literally laying on just a little platform that we set up for her. And she's just kind of like acting like she's flying like Superman, basically. But what Eric, our gaffer, is doing is he's able to light map particular areas of the screen to mimic. So our lights in the background that we're using will mimic what's happening on the screen itself. So that's what's cool about the KnowLED app is the light mapping function. And so if you look down there at the bottom middle image, the light itself that is projecting onto our talent is mimicking the colors and the saturation and basically the movement, the time of everything as it's actually happening on screen. So the light mapping function is really, really cool. And then another one is this motorcycle scene, which is when basically our character's inside a video game riding this motorcycle. And so what we used with this one is I was able to send Eric the images that are on the background themselves, and he's able to load those into the app, and he can play that video that I sent him in the app, and he's able to pick out the quadrants on the screen that he loaded to mimic what the lights want to do within that particular video. So that's just another technique you can use with light mapping and really executing exactly that light that you're going for to make the screen look a lot more believable. And then another really cool feature that we have on the KnowLED app is the live mode. And so the live mode, as the screen's playing, Eric, our gaffer, is able to just hold his iPad up and use the camera in the iPad and kind of mimic what is happening in that world as it's like as the iPad camera is filming the screen itself. So you don't even need to preload anything. You just use your iPad. What it's seeing is what you're mapping from there. If that makes sense. So it's the live mapping feature, and it's really cool. We played a lot with that, especially with these environments that are just like really fast paced and crazy. And that's really the look. We just wanted a lot of action, a lot of motion. That's what we were going for. So yeah, I think let me stop sharing this for a second here, and let's see here. I think I will open it up to Q&A if we have any time. Yeah, there we go.
Hey,
Okay.
yeah, we
Sorry, I
got
lost
the
track
time.
of time there. I just kept talking. I
No,
can
not
I
at
can
all.
answer any questions if we have time.
Yeah, totally.
So
Personally, I love this stuff. Like the XR LED stage is literally like having your own playground and geeking out to make it into whatever your brain can think of.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Have you encountered any productions where like some scenes are shot in the real world and some are on the LED stage?
Uh, yes, yes and no. One of the scenes we actually did uh, I didn't show it, I didn't cover it, but we had a scene where we had a vault and we had somebody opening a vault, and then so that was real practical world, and then the talent behind them was actually an LED world of like this crazy
Oh well,
futuristic warehouse. So like we've done stuff like that and blended real world, different location altogether with this. But that's what's nice about what you see is what you get. So if you're able to have something to reference, like okay, we need to match this lighting exactly what was happening here, we can
yeah,
do that. So that's what's
yeah.
cool about the LED wall.
Well, so like no uncanny valley Polar Express type issues mixing the scenes or anything like that.
No, I mean, you kind of experiment and play just like you would, but I mean, it can happen. It just depends, obviously how crazy your scene is and what you're trying to match. But
Gotcha.
uh, for the most part, if you have a plan going into it, then you should be pretty good. So
Cool.
that's all about planning with this.
Yeah, pre-planning is a super requirement. We
Oh yeah,
have username Cheesehead Sports Cards, like the name, with a question in the
nice.
chat. Do you happen to know what the typical pixel pitch used on these LED walls is?
Oh man, I off the top of my head, I totally forget. I feel like I just totally forgot what it is. But in that Godox, the production series video, we actually referenced the perfect pixel pitch.
Oh, okay,
Actually
cool.
had a technician come in and say, "This is what you're looking for when you're looking at pixel pitch." So check out that video. It's on the Godox Global YouTube, and that should totally help answer that.
Awesome. I've seen some making of and BTS of like XR LED stage productions and was always
Mhm.
blown away by the ideas and the possibilities. So even though you explored more of the 2D approach, my curiosity is making me want to ask a 3D question. Um, One thing that's got me the pre-visualization aspect, like seeing the environment
Mhm.
from the director's or the camera's perspective, using I guess it would be Unreal at that point, with
Mhm.
like a headset to see it through. Can the lighting for talent be pre-visualized as well in those scenarios?
I would think so. Just it depends on how advanced your stage is, right? So like it
Mhm.
just depends on where all of your, if you're using Unreal Engine, you're probably most likely on a larger stage. It's going to have the side panels, the top panel, all of that. So you're probably able to use that to your advantage as well, as far as like the actual world itself to light everything.
Mhm.
But I would think that lighting wise, yes, to answer your question, yes. Like with the KnowLED app, you could take what's in your Unreal Engine world and I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but
Oh, go
take
ahead.
that, import that video, at least a reference of that into the app, and the app will communicate with the lighting to mimic what's happening in that exact world. Does that make sense?
No, totally.
Are you saying for like camera tests with your actors and everything to see what
Well,
lighting works with them?
well, no, if you're, yeah, if you're, if you're creating that virtual set so that you can just at least view it in pre-visualization, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you can plant like where your subjects would be in that environment. I
Yes.
was, and then you'd recreate. You can create the lighting in previs, and then what you're saying is carry that over into the NoLED app
Into
and into
yeah,
reality.
into reality. Yep. So that's the great thing about doing this is like it's really a big experimentation, right? So like you do have the capability to make sure something does work before you just get there with everything, and you got to
Yeah.
be ready to go because time is always the enemy, right? Like whenever you're on set, you're always battling the clock. Like you're always battling the clock. It doesn't matter. You're trying to get all of your coverage for your day. Otherwise, you don't want the producer yelling at you about going overtime or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm speaking as a director, right? So like they're always like, "Hey, come on, we need to, keep it going." And so I think of like an editor as well. So I'm like, okay, the more that we can set up in pre-pro for our lighting and our worlds and everything, the more practice we can have beforehand, the faster we're going to move the actual day of. So yeah, that's very important.
Excellent. If I'm using these terms incorrectly, my bad. But like as you are also a VFX artist, during production or during the shoot, do you also have to light according to like any effects or CGI elements or characters that will be added in post, or does the lighting for those things happen in the post production process?
It really just depends, obviously, what the scene is. So like if you're in a gunfight, you want muzzle flashes or whatever, laser beam, say you're doing Star Wars, then obviously that's more of fine tuning, and I would think that you would use what you have practically to your advantage. So it's something that I would just do mostly in post as far as effects goes. I would
Mhm.
handle that mainly there. I would give myself a foundation, like, okay, I know I need a flash of blue here, a flash of pink there. I'll use that, say there's like a wormhole that opens up right out of nowhere. We actually did a project where it was the witches layer scene. I didn't really cover that much, but it was a very moonlit world, candlelit world. But what happens is this like lime green portal opens up.
Mhm.
And so I actually had a portal open up on the actual LED screen. But because of the KnowLED app able to track what's happening there in real time, it brought in the greens from the actual portal opening up on the screen to mimic that green. And then from there, I would take it into post production and put sparks and part of the
Okay.
portal opening up, digitally after what we
Gotcha.
shot. If that makes sense. So you're just layering in as much as possible, but the more
Mhm.
layers, the better. So if that explains anything, so
No, yeah,
I'm more of a experimental, like okay, that works. If that doesn't work, then we'll try something else. But yeah, I'm more of just a on the fly problem solver. So
nice. Yo,
yeah.
you're hitting the nail on the head for my questions at least. Jameson, thanks so much for the very illuminating presentation today.
Well, thank you.
Also,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, totally. Also, again, thanks to Godox for hosting this. Be sure to check out more of Jameson and Godox on the Godox Global YouTube channel, or take a look at any of the links shared in the chat for the Godox products he mentioned. If you've liked this, it'll be available for replay along with other presentations on our BH Event Space YouTube channel. Jameson, one more time, thank you so much for joining us and presenting this awesome topic.
Hey, thank you, and thank you for tuning in. And sorry I didn't get to go in depth as much as I wanted to on the some of the behind the scenes aspects, but hopefully we got enough information out there to at least get, hopefully get a little bit more confidence into getting started in the space. So
And if anyone wants to go in depth, they know, head to the Godox Global YouTube channel, guys, and you'll see more of a deep dive on all the things he talked about today. All right, with that, this has been another edition of the B and H Virtual Event Space. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you.